Welcome to Cribwolf Talks. My name is Lino. I am the host of Cribwolf Talks. As you can see, we're here in the basement studio for our very first webcast. But before we introduce a very special guest, I want to revisit a term we've used many times in the past, the term MURC. It stands for Multi-Unit Residential Community. What is a MURC? It truly is a progression from the small group home model that so many families are accustomed to hearing. But it is even more. It is a place where an aggregate number of individuals with varied abilities can live together in an affordable, safe, nurturing environment that allows them for self-growth and independence. Are there enough of these MURCs around? No, they're not. There's very few of them. But these nonprofit organizations that have constructed MURCs are the pioneers that paved the road for change. So we have one such pioneer with us, Mr. Bryan Keshen, President and CEO of Reena. Bryan, welcome to our first webcast.
Pleasure to be here. I'm not a pioneer, by the way.
Well,
I'm a follower.
Some would argue against that, but we've known each other, for 4 or 5 years now?
Yeah.
And by the way, thank you for endorsing my book, The Waiting Game, which was really a compilation of events and stories regarding, what families go through and what I went through what I'm going through as a parent of a special needs young man. Yeah. So it gives a lot of insight, for the developmental disabilities and the challenges they face. I have also had the pleasure of touring your one facility, I believe your first one, the Reena Community Center, which was built in it was opened in 2012, right? In Vaughan. Yeah. Right? And I was very impressed, by the way, with that facility. And sir, you are building your own legacy, Bryan. Your story deserves recognition for the work you do and the lives of the individuals with developmental disabilities that you're touching, right? And supporting.
So you refer to those as MURCs, which, and we call it a Reena Community Residence. I think the idea is the same. People living together, living in the community, being part of things. And that was actually done by my mom. It was an idea that was driven by a individual family like yours that said, we need a whole of person approach. We need to be person-centered and develop housing that's built around people, but has supports, community, and in community. And so that project started from that vision from that one family, then grew into a concept, and then the opportunity came to get an acre of land and build on it. And my mom sought the funding federally, provincially, and with donors, and built that first project. And it's become a model both in the benefits it does socially. Mm-hmm. People have their own apartments, they have their own space, they can invite friends over, but they also have all the supports they need. People need access to 24/7 supports, but they don't need 24/7 supports. Most of us sleep quite well at night. I don't need someone watching me sleep unless I have a major health issue. And so in the model, you have 24/7 access, you have your own space, you have supports when you need it, and you have community as much as you choose to find it. It's there in the building, it's there in the greater community. You have right out, in that case, it's right on a community campus with a community center, a high school, a whole bunch of activities, and it's right in the heart of community.
So we're going to get to the Reena, the first and the second, and actually you have a third one we'll talk about too, but I'm interested in knowing why you chose this career path and what fuels Bryan, right? Why you have such passion for this work that you do.
So I think I was born into it. So my mom was the chair of the Association for Children with Learning Disabilities in Ontario. Right. And when she started to get involved in that, it was during the deinstitutionalization period of the 70s. Okay. And she was asked to sit on a board of this starting organization, no name yet, ultimately became Reena. And she sat on the board, and they started to put together a plan. And the first plans were to establish 2 group homes and a summer camp. They went out to recruit executive director, and they couldn't find anyone. So the main charitable leader of this organization, the donor who helped get it started, said, this lady seems to know what she's doing. She won't cost us much. We'll pay her a little money. She can be the executive director. Wow. Well, so 42 years later, she had built an organization that was 26 million, 480 staff, and had built multiple buildings. I mean, the houses and the projects that she built were tremendous in the community. And it's not her. I mean, it really is about a community of passionate board members, about staff, about the families. It's all working together. So she had the opportunity. So you're asking my career path, I was born into that.
Wow.
11 years old, I was doing door knocking.
11?
11. I was knocking on doors to advocate to allow, at the time, you didn't have rights of zoning. You couldn't put a group home in communities easily. There was all the NIMBYisms and all that. And I remember knocking on doors and talking about it. And then we did fundraising. And I remember being the person who dragged all the goods out. We did these fairs and events. I still think the best job I ever did with Reena, and the one I think I feel most complete about, it was the chief bottle washer. Literally, I was in the kitchen in the camp, and I was the assistant cook. And my job was to make sure at the end of the night, the kitchen was clean. It's the only time I've had a job where I knew it was finished at the end at Reena. Every other job, there's so much more to do. There's another thing another challenge, another opportunity. So it became part of me. It just grew up with. My bedroom was respite. When my mom often went to places and found someone who was in distress in one of these institutional settings, she said, they're coming home now. And what that meant is, Bryan, you're moving out of your bedroom. Literally, some of my furniture is spread out throughout the group homes of Reena today. And I was in one, which is an elder care home. We have services for elders. We have children's programs. In that home, there was a piece of art hanging that I had brought back from Poland. But you couldn't see the Polish around it. And there was a Polish woman in the staff. I said, that piece is from Poland. She said, no, that's a Jewish thing with a flame. No. I said, that was actually from my bedroom. I brought it back from Poland. I took out the frame, opened it, and it was protest from Poland, protest poster. Wow. So I grew up with this. I lived with it. But the passion comes from wanting to, and I guess that's what my mom imbued in me, is that there are values that are greater than ourselves. There are things we can do for society that go beyond ourselves. And we have to make the best and include everyone in our communities. And so those values become part of who I am and what I do and what I've always done throughout my life.
It's so great to hear that. I mean, am I correct? You don't have anybody in your immediate family that has disabilities, or whether it's intellectual, developmental, or
I don't have.
Your mother had passion to help others. Is this what I'm hearing?
So afterwards, we found out after my mom. Why did my mom get involved with the association? Yeah. My sister had some learning challenges. Okay. Later on, in her 40s, we found out she had myotonic dystrophy. We actually found out my father had it, and her son. It passes on male to female, female to male. And so my nephew has myotonic dystrophy, and each generation is more significant in its impact on your development. So slower development, slower physical development, slower growth can lead to some developmental disabilities. In the case of my sister, it was mild. But with my nephew, it's more significant. So
you basically were involved from the ground up, as you said, chief bottle washer, whatever, and you moved up the ladder to more responsible positions.
I stepped out of Reena when I was in my 20s.
Right.
I went on to do a master's in social work. I had a teaching degree, and my passion was educational stuff and system changes. So I did my master's in organizational change. I then went on and did fundraising, funding and community development. Did a whole bunch of campaigns for the Jewish community primarily here and in Vancouver. And then I was hired back to do what was called Jewish Toronto Tomorrow, which was a vision of a $250 million capital campaign, $250 million endowment, big mega effort that I was just one team member of. In that project, I took on intake of new projects in development. One of them was a community center, one was a university student center, a whole bunch of projects. One was a children's program for people with physical disabilities. So those were the intake projects that then we marketed and supported. In the process, the executive director of one of the community centers passed away, heart attack, and I was the most knowledgeable about the operation. I was seconded as executive director. Well, so a year of that, and then they seconded me to run the second community center and a third. And so I built two new community centers. And so when my mom retired, past board members called me and said, Bryan, you have the experience, you have the passion, you have the fundraising.
We need you.
We need you. Would you consider applying? And
Terrific.
4 rounds of interviews, presentation to the board, very competitive process. I was selected and have been here for 7 years. And I'm trying to retain that legacy and the impact, but in my style. I'm not my mother, but learn from her.
No, you're doing a great job. Since I got you in that seat, I want to ask you this one question. Since I've just relatively new at the game since we started the foundation, about 4 or 5 years ago. But we've been very busy, and we keep coming across we've been using the term individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities. For news, like I'm a parent, of a young man with some developmental disabilities. And I noticed on your website, if you don't mind, and I've heard you speak to the term individuals with varied abilities. So what is the correct and respectful terminology?
I don't know if the words matter. It's how we feel about the words. So let's be careful, because any word now the word individual is used a lot to replace the term person support, or often whatever term, and now people are feel uncomfortable. It's how you use the word. I can be called all sorts of nasty things by my best friends, but I know they're doing it with love. So it doesn't matter what we call people, but I think it's important to recognize that each of us has support needs ultimately at some point in our life. We've had it when we were a child, we'll have it when we're a senior. Some of us have more needs, and over our lifetime, those things change. Those people with disabilities that impact their life ability, their ability to manage their own life, to cook, to shop, to bank, to do to get employment maybe, if it affects that permanently throughout their life, those are the people we're talking about that need support if it comes from a cognitive, whatever title you want to use, that's what about. So they have varied abilities. They have strengths, they have weaknesses, they have personalities, right? You know it. Your son, So he's got a personality.
He's wonderful, exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
So
I actually brought a lot of clarity to it. I'm glad you answered that way. It's really good. So let's now get back to your wonderful projects. That I think our viewers would like to know more about, because I know as a parent of a special needs young man, we're obviously we're on the wait list as well, right? So and I talked to hundreds of just families that are still waiting and wondering what to do, right? So you mentioned about Reena in your opening comments, Reena Community Center that started and of course Lou Fritman is 2021, right?
Right, we just completed.
Just got completed, and then Elmridge, which is I happened to sit on your. I attended your I guess it was a press conference where you had an update. Right?
Yeah, community engagement session.
Yeah, that's in Toronto, right? North Toronto.
Marley and Eglinton area.
So can you just kind of show how you manifested these, these visions of these properties from a vision to bricks and mortar?
Okay. So
how did it go from A to Z, right?
Let's back up a bit, because there's an array of solutions that different people need. So at the same time we built, between 2012 and now, we've built 3 other group homes. One is specialized for people with significant behavioral issues.
By group homes, maybe 3 or 4, like the conventional group home models? Okay.
Well, there's nothing conventional about the way we do it, but the conceptually
from a number
conventional, from a number point of view. In that case, it's 5 people living together, severe behavioral issues, specialized windows, walls, systems, but we've also developed a model that we tested and had independently reviewed, where it gave people independent spaces. So each person has a bedroom, a living room, and a support space. And that gives people safety. We also designed every room so there are 2 exits, so staff feel safe. Behavior issues dropped from the previous location they were in, same group of people, to a new building. The design made a difference. So we're not only involved in these large multi-unit buildings, but we believe as a sector we need to build a lot of the multi-units, because they fill a lot of the spectrum. So don't forget, people are on a range of abilities and needs and support needs. So a lot of people don't need housing like we're building, because this is built to B3 standards, fire safety standards, care occupancy based, having 24/7. A lot of people don't need that. They need touch points. And hopefully there's enough being built out in the community. Other people need high-end support. They need staff 24/7 with them, and their social skills and the risk of things like environmental pieces setting them off are huge. So you can't have them in a building with hundreds of people and alarms and noises and people moving and sounds, because those are all triggers. You got to build an environment that suits their needs. So there's a spectrum. These kinds of housing, the projects we're involved with now and the one you're talking about, are built on the concept that we build apartments like any other apartment. They can be one bedroom, they can be shared 2 bedrooms. It's amazing how many siblings we have living with us now because we have these 2-bedroom models. 3 bedroom, and then we have what's called a 4-bedroom, but mostly for respite. So in any of those units, people can live and they can have the supports they need. And their supports can go up and down. So we have one person who has severe MS, plus a developmental disability, plus some other health issues. He lives in his own apartment. He doesn't have 24/7 staff there, but he has 24/7 access to staff. And it goes up and down as his physical needs change almost daily, because you have this larger group of staff available and you have that professionalization. We also recognize that there's just not enough housing being built, and no one's building, no one that I know of. You have long-term care facilities that are B3 standards, you have hospitals, but you have no housing. So we put seniors in condos, and when we think about it, in these condos, the fire safety systems are very poor for someone who's starting to have dementia. How do they know how to get down if they're physically able to? So they really need a care model, but they don't have it. And the fire rules aren't for them. But if you put 3 people with developmental disabilities in that same building, the whole building needs B3 standards because the care rules say they are not able to, because they're cared by one organization supporting them. So we start to look at all these barriers, all these challenges, the absence of housing. We said, well, that's what our clients need. Let's build it. And so that's what's driving us. So our next project is intended to be 106 units. We'll see what happens with the city. We just submitted our site plan and zoning. And the process begins for us with a needs assessment. What are the problems out there that we're trying to solve? And what talent and skills do we have to bring to solving that problem? So what we have is years of building experience now. We have a team that knows how to operate buildings. I wouldn't start with 105 units, and I wouldn't recommend you do. But if you're doing something, build to the capacity and strength of your organization and to the needs of the community you're in. We've identified a lot. So we have 125 people who have come to us saying, once we announce we're doing this building, saying, we'd love to live here. We have the ministry saying, we have a long list of people who fit the category that you're looking for. And then internally, if you look at organizations, there are a lot of people in group homes who don't need to be in group homes. They were the models that were available at the time. They're looking for more independent living and styles that are different. And they could perfectly live in this kind of environment. So if you put all those together, we have way more demand than the housing will provide. And so we start with that need. We know there's a huge need, and it fits that mid-range category, not the high extreme behaviors or people who have complex needs, and not the people who can live fairly independent in any community setting. It's that mix, which is the multitude of people waiting on the list. And so the model we have set up gives the possibility for people with significant physical disabilities, to mild developmental disabilities, to mental health concerns, to brain injury, the same kind of model and support in housing. And that mix, and it's also seniors. So we have some seniors with dementia. We have people who've moved in with developmental disabilities who can drive but can't do their accounting. We have people, it's a whole range of people and range of ages. So it's that's what the process for us starts with, that decision. What's the need? What's our talent? What do we bring to the table? Then we start putting together an opportunity list. Where are there spaces, land, or interests that we could acquire and leverage? So we leveraged on our previous building a roadway that was not being developed. And we bought out what was intended to be a roadway and built on it. This project, we were already operating in one of the buildings, and so the city was giving up various smaller buildings that weren't efficient for them to manage. So we asked to buy it from the city, and the property next to it was available, and we bought it at market, combined the two to create a reasonable site to build on in the heart. And so, again, that site is going to cost us $1.5 million in Toronto to get land, which is nothing in the marketplace. So developers would beg for that. But they couldn't build what we're building because they couldn't get away with it. The community wants what we're doing. We get a lot of support, thank goodness. Politically, we get a lot of support from neighbors. We do, and you were part of that session. That was not a required session. We've already run 2 neighborhood discussions to involve the neighbors. We've walked the neighborhood. We've talked to the neighbors. We've engaged them to say, this is for you, not for us. We as an organization, every time we build, it's a challenge. It's putting us at risk, the whole organization at risk. So my board, when they make the decision, they know there's millions of dollars that are their liability if they don't succeed. But they believe in it, and they have confidence in our history and our culture and what we do, so they make it possible. So for us, this is about the neighbors and the community, and that's how we go to the next stage. We get that site, we engage people, we have conversation. We've done this with every project. We make sure that we've got people on board at all levels politically, federal, provincial, municipal, and the community. We also look for other partners, so we don't do it alone. None of our projects are just Reena. We're just building, and the landlords, and we have a number of people we support, but in all our projects so far, March of Dimes has been a partner. The Lin previously, and now the community CCAC, the Community Access Center and Health. The upcoming project will probably have Safe Haven, March of Dimes, ourselves, a senior organization, working together on the programmatic side. Reena will do the build, but we need that mix of strengths to bring the supports for people. And the other philosophy we use is that all staff who are there work for everyone who's there. So the person in front of you is the person you're supporting. And that's hard. That's really hard, because when you're paid for by someone else, you can easily narrow cast your approach to a person.
Right.
I remember a discussion we're having, debating how to support someone. And we're having a debate between Ministry of Health and Ministry of Community Social Services. And the discussion came up, who pays for cutting toenails? Right? It's an important thing. You got to cut your toenails.
Yeah.
Is it a health issue? Yeah, of course it's a health
I've
issue.
done my son's
Is it a social issue?
Yeah.
Of course you can't walk around with, but you ask the staff in the front line, who does it? The first person who notices it does it. That's who does it. I mean, it's not, and we can all learn the skills to do that, so it really doesn't matter who, we just assign it to someone. So there's shared staff. We were working with a group of nurses who said a person who's on a ventilator and no way can he go into community. And our staff, who build on social inclusion, and said, of course, we're going to get him actually in the swimming pool.
Wow,
you know what?
That's great.
They said, no way, done. The guy goes swimming. There's a system we developed. They've learned, their teams who are protective, they come from that philosophy to protect, have learned that sort of inclusion is possible and ways to do it. And so we built that bridge, but it takes a lot of effort. You got to work on culture. So that's the other piece.
It's a not giving up. It's the find the solution, and it's a team effort, right? And have that person that you're caring for as a primary person.
And don't be territorial.
Exactly.
Right? You got. So we often experience. So the first question is whose responsibility, who pays. That's a common question.
Yeah.
So I always say, don't ask me, because I'm the worst guy. I'm going to defend my agency and our financial. Ask the guys on the front line who's doing it. That's who pays for it. They'll figure it out. The team on the front, they don't care. They care about the person. That's all they care about. And if you give it to them, they'll solve it. And often we'll upfront stuff. Like I know we've upfronted clients that are officially March of Dimes. We've upfronted costs to hundreds of thousands with no guarantee that we're going to get back, because we trust the relationship. Ultimately, we will get that back in the relationship. But you got to do it. You got to do what that person needs. If you need to bring in that support, then do it. If you need to bring in emergency or behavioral therapists or whatever it is, do it. And then we'll solve it afterwards.
Interesting. Very good. So let's talk about the government now. I know everybody
Which
loves to
one?
talk. I know. So understanding the federal government just did reshuffling of, I know the
Portfolios,
last conference we attended, the portfolio, right? The ministries. I think there's more of them now. What's your take on the success, the role of the government in resolving the housing crisis?
So the federal government has made a huge step forward, and we were very active, and all of us in the Intentional Community Consortium, advocating for housing that was inclusive and targeted to people with developmental disabilities. So they've articulated a target. Do I think it's a big enough target? No, doesn't matter. It's 2,400 units across the country over a 10-year period. Really not a lot.
Was that the $100 million over 10 years?
No dollar amount.
It was units.
It's units out of that multi-million-dollar national housing strategy. In conversations with the government and the leadership, that's a minimum. They hope we go beyond it, but we're somewhat pessimistic that anyone else is getting on board as much as we were getting on board to this. So they set it out as a target to see, and they hope to surpass it. Now it's up to us as communities, as particularly the province, to step up and say we're going to hit and exceed that target, because it still is a provincial and often a municipal decision how much resources. So at all those levels need. So there are monies available. CMHC has the resources to loan and or contribute portion. I think CMHC will do up to 10% maximum contribution. They will lend you 95%, but generally I wouldn't want to be borrowing from them 95%. Our approach has been 20% from community, meaning donors and local community, 20% from levels of government, or 20 to 30% if you can get all the levels participating, and 50% of the residents themselves and their rent. And so they are the primary owners of the building. They should be. The tenants, it's their building, and we should never be giving everything to them or to anyone. Everyone should own it, and we also believe that community should own it. So if the community contributes, they have a responsibility to it. So it's not government alone, but the government has set a framework where you can access resources. So there are seed funds up to, I think, $500,000 for early development. Now that's a high target.
Pre-development costs.
Pre-development costs, site plan zoning, getting your drawings together. And then depending on your project, you're going to have to be pretty far. You're going to have to go pretty deep to finalize the CMHC loan and contribution. But you can have early insight into whether you're going to get it by having conversations. And I can say the CMHC in Ontario has dedicated a lead person for working with the DS sector. So any agency or organization or family or group who's building multiple units wants to apply to CMHC, there's a person who understands our sector. We did a whole training for their finance teams, their intake teams, and walk them through our building and why we're different, why one unit isn't one family. Because you could have 3 different individuals living in a unit. So there are 3 different households. So they're used to thinking one unit is one family. We say 3 people choosing to live together, they're individuals. And so they've modified some of their approaches. They've also taken some of our suggestions around what are criteria for good projects, being access to community, distance to public transit, distance to community centers or community associations, distance to medical facilities. Being close to things that are community are important, I think, in a housing project. So they've been great. Federal, provincial right now has been positive in the sense that lots of support, verbal articulation, and without the province you can't go ahead and build, because the feds won't give you money unless you have provincial nod at least, or silence. And right now the implementation of national housing strategy in Ontario is at the point where the supportive housing component is now coming into focus. So there's been a whole bunch of reviews, assessments, So the market-based stuff, there's been some major changes. Not enough, but major changes. There's ongoing work with municipalities about affordability housing. Now they're starting to look at supportive housing. We're hopeful that 10% of every dollar being spent gets spent to support people with developmental disabilities, with the intent that that would change both capital and ongoing funding. So rent supplements, any kind of program that exists, if 10% were given, because right now it's a 40-year waiting list. 40 years.
I think the listeners should know that. There's been a lot of inconsistencies with what the time frame, right?
I can tell you, every region in this province, there is 1 unit of space for every 4 people who are looking for it. Those units are not growing quickly. In Toronto, I think we are one of 2 who have added any housing in the last few years. There are a number trying to, but most places are just filling their vacancies. That won't get us there.
Exactly.
That won't get us there. So I come from a Judaic background. I often call it the Moses syndrome. You don't get to see your kid find a home till you die on the other side of the mountain. Then they get to cross the Jordan.
The promised land.
The promised land. The thing we all want is our kids to be safe somewhere and secure. It practically takes us, in most cases, it takes either a crisis in the family, a crisis for the person, this family member, or someone who's a caregiver to, right now, change that. I think with this kind of models, though, you can go further with less resources. We have, in our first project, we had 12 families who were able to self-fund the initiative between their passports, their own funding, the affordable rent that they got. It's very possible for certain people, if they don't have huge amounts of support. But if we can do that for some, then we can make it easier for everyone else.
You're actually moving, Bryan, into my next question.
I know what you're thinking, that's why.
The DSO, the developmental services, the next question was regards to the wait list. And of course, it seems like, have you heard about the new DSO housing toolkit initiative? Of course. So I've been asked, and I've attended the seminars, I've listened to them. It seems that there's a shift in policy there, and I know that the self-funded model does work. If you have the right individuals, you find the right individuals, and they're capable of accessing the financing and able to work together. You mentioned what the fit. I remember you answered a question in one of your seminars. Somebody said, "Well, I'm fourth. I've been waiting on your wait list, and I'm next. Why am I not on in this new unit this new project that you're building?" I think it was Elmridge, and you answered, correct me if I'm mistaken. There is an application process, but there also ultimately has to be a fit for that individual with the building, right? Yeah. To me, it sounds like the self-funding model that and it's not a band-aid approach. Perhaps has been worded that way in the past, but or more recently, but it doesn't resolve the large number of individuals that are in the shadows. Correct. I have this theory, Bryan. I don't know if you think about it, but when I hear the number 18,000, excuse me, or 14,000, whatever the number is, right? Because I never really knew what number, the exact number, right? I'm told it's here or there. It's in the tens of thousands is what I tell people. So the question is, how do we decrease those numbers, and not have to wait 40 years, right? So here's another problem. Is it possible that number is even bigger because how many people have even registered? Right. Because to be on that waiting list, you have to register. Yeah. Right. So
I believe the numbers are greater. So let's say the population of adults with developmental disabilities is somewhere between 90 and 100 and something thousand.
Okay.
We know that 68,000 people with developmental disabilities are on ODSP as an indicator. So that's just that group. There are the housing, so Toronto has, I guess it's now 5 to 6,000 people on the DSO list, of which 1,500 have housing.
Only
Right? That
5,000 for all of Toronto? the GTA?
5 to 6,000 who are on the DSO residential list.
Okay.
There are many more who are in passport programs who haven't
Well, that's for
asked
supports.
for.
That's for
who
supports.
Yeah, that's for support. Who haven't asked for housing or
Yeah, yeah.
articulated housing as a need or identified that. So just that alone is huge. And that's repeated at every region in the
Well, I
province.
understand that your
So-
project is 126 or 124. I
Yeah.
would say Reena's projects are fairly substantial in size. You're talking
Yeah, but they're not going to solve.
and that's not all developmental. You have
right.
varied abilities, right?
Correct.
So 6,000 would seem quite
Yeah.
a large number to resolve even in Toronto, right? Would
Right.
you agree?
So if you try to bite off this elephant in one bite, you're never going to do
No,
it.
I
It's too big.
I know.
But so the toolkit is great because it's started to create a pattern of putting pressure on municipalities to identify that citizens with developmental disabilities have housing needs. Most municipalities until a few years ago didn't even track the housing needs. Peel was one of the first ones to do a study on this. The region I live in, I had a huge argument with council. York Region has said, we are not in the supportive housing business. We don't even track. We don't need to know. It's not our responsibility. It's not in our scope of work. That is a provincial mandate under MC.
I remember that being discussed, yeah.
So that challenge gets pressurized by creating that toolkit because it's forcing people to think through, can they do it? What do they need in terms of resources? And then they start to go on to, and it's pushing people to municipal lists. And municipal lists are about affordability, access, and stuff. So it creates a pressure around at least creating the housing for everyone in an equitable way. Whether it gets done and how long, and whether it gets equalized, right? So if there's been 20 years of not building any supportive housing, you're going to be way behind the 40-year wait list compared to the 12 or 20-year wait list for affordable housing. It's twice as much at least for people. But if you don't start to advance that by putting extra resources into it, you'll never get there. And if it's based on $1 per unit, you're even worse because these units are a little more expensive to create: the wider hallways, the safer fire systems, the access, the programming, the support spaces for staff, so on and so forth.
And the cost of real estate.
So the toolkit is great. It gives I went through it to look at, and it's fairly comprehensive.
It is. I give
You
them that.
really
It
give
is.
you
It's
tools
well done.
and links to all sorts of things. So it gets you ready. The problem, and puts pressure, but it doesn't create housing.
No.
It may allow you to figure out a few people on the margin, but that still matters, right? I'm only doing a few people on the margin too. I mean, I'm going to build 105 units and it's going to only impact 60, 70 people out of the thousands that are waiting. It's marginal, but it's a move. And modeling those moves will advance the whole thing. And now we got to break it down and do more of those and find new solutions, new models, and build them out. So, I work a lot with the group, the DSO navigators. I've done presentations with and to and shared, and I invite them to all our sessions. They're really passionate about trying to find ways to work, but they're not building housing. That's got to be a discussion with our municipalities, our provincial government, and with organizations and builders. I'm now in discussion with a developer to see if he will include in his design and plan at least 20 units that are designed for support needs. Will he meet the B3 standards? That's always where they fall off. I've had 20 or so conversations with development folks, and when I say, okay, you got to meet this standard for me to create care occupancy, they back off. They say, wow, that's tough. You mean I have to put in extra wide hallways, staircases at the end, I have to put in fire safety, I have to annunciator systems, sprinklers, that's extra 8%. That's my margin that I'm, right?
Well, it's very expensive. It's a very expensive, but in all defense, you're right. I mean, the initiative, the DSO Housing Toolkit, does create discussions.
Yeah.
I like that. And,
Yeah.
and the district navigators are passionate about their work. I know one
They
or
are.
two myself, but
Yeah.
they're just passionate about their work, and maybe the creating that conversation, because here's the problem: the dilemma with parents, and is that I think we get so carried away with our own family unit, right? We want to provide the best life, the best quality of life for our individual with developmental disabilities or varied abilities, as you say, right? That you forget about this,
Yeah.
about this, tsunami that is waiting around the corner. You know what I mean? As you say, that housing, the roof over your head, that safe home that you want to continue when you're gone, right? So the aging population now, well, you know what? The clock's ticking.
Yeah.
So, maybe it's not so bad to have everybody say, well, let's start thinking about it. Let's get together, create conversations, and I think that's what is happening from what I'm hearing from these toolkit seminars, housing toolkit seminars I've listened to. So that's a good thing, right? But again, there's that one painful, concern, right? What do you tell a parent who's preparing for their end of life, whether it be aging, ill health, the need for freedom?
Right.
Because your whole life, you're not going anywhere, you're not traveling, you're not doing a lot
You're
of
a
things.
caregiver.
You're a caregiver, right? Till the time you're
The
underground.
So when we compare caregivers for cancer patients or any other issue, the highest numbers are in DS sector for lifetime caregiving. So people who have a lifetime of having to do that kind of work, and we don't recognize it.
No, we don't.
So recently, there's an initiative called the 3CE, which is a caregiver-focused effort, and we're starting to hear it. So Petrocan jumped on the bandwagon,
That's
others, right?
That's
so
right. That's right.
that whole caregiving attention.
I love it.
3 years ago, I put forward a proposal that we do have a Caregiver Recognition Day. Start with that, at least. And then we should be looking at tax values and other things and supports and training and so on. We did a sort of research on what training components that we do could be provided to families. It's a life mission, and the end of it is not, so what happens? That's the problem. What happens next to my kid? And no one, Reena won't. No one will do what you do for your kid. And that's just the reality.
Exactly.
But that's true for all of us. So
I
you got to take that deep breath. Now the question is, what's the closest thing to it? And sometimes you have to recognize that what you've done may not have been all good. So I've had some families who are so coddling and so protective.
I've heard that argument.
And I go, wow, this person has the ability to get a job. And you're worried about them taking the bus? We can teach them how to take a bus. Get out of that protective. I know that gives you purpose. I had a parent who told me, I can't die. I have a purpose. I have to take care of my kid. Well, you're going to die, and now you haven't taken care of your kid and given them the skills. So it's a big challenge, and we have to also be conscious that we are beneficiaries of some fixed benefits. So the fact that we get ODSP, and that's pretty well an entitlement at this point. Didn't have to be, but it is. We get now pretty well anyone who applies, and while the resources are there, are getting base passport dollars. Those are new things, and starting to feel, we have to be careful not to feel too entitled. Just because we would want something doesn't mean it's available as a society. We can build it, we can create it, but we're going to have to be creative and not expect someone else to do it all. It's a partnership.
Yeah.
So not all families have the capacity or the skill, and the reality is the system does step in, not in nice ways initially. Like I'm just dealing now with two people who are in shelter whose parent died. They lived illegally in this rented unit, and the kids were kicked out, but they're both with developmental disabilities. They're now in shelter and trying to build a plan. The parent died. They were living there for another week with the dead parent in the unit. Those moments, if we had gotten involved earlier and made a plan, this parent wasn't young. We knew something was going to happen. Why didn't we put something in place? But we didn't know. And now they're in shelter and there's no housing and no supports to go with it. And that will come. I'm confident it will come. They won't stay that way. But that's the crisis that leads to the solution rather than finding the solution before the crisis. And we've got to start building those. And they're piece by piece by piece, person by person, and family plan. And it starts when someone's 15. I honestly believe the plan must be in place by when someone's 15. It's the hardest process to do. And so I like the toolkit for that because it gives you some, and we created a similar sort of tool for people coming into residency. But you have a child at 15, you know somewhat what that trajectory is.
40 years down the road now, so that's going to be 55 if you start thinking that way, right?
That's right.
So, the thing is, as a parent, you're weighing that dilemma, right? There's no regret, right? There's no regret. I don't know. I've never talked to one parent with special needs that says, I regret caring for they love them to death. You're right. We probably spoil them. We do it more than we should sometimes, to allow that independence and that self-growth. But at the end of the day, we need to speak out too. These same parents need to be shaken and say, hey, the clock's ticking, like you said, you're aging, right? And pretty soon your son or daughter is going to be 45, 55.
So we need to come with solutions.
And you've said it before, that you keep saying it. Everybody has a right to a home, right? Yeah. So that's the thing, right? I just want to ensure that.
And if we can get to that basic human right.
It'll never be the same as the caregiver's home, but as what you're doing at Reena that provides, all the amenities and gives that independence, that has to be replicated. I want that in Halton. Be honest with you. Yeah. If I could clone you.
Actually, Halton may be a good. I mean, they're ready.
They are.
They are ready. At least the municipality is, but it's not easy. And for parents who day in, day out are struggling just to keep it together so many times, and the ups and downs, doing that extra effort and being aware of it, and we just want it solved, and we want it done nice.
That's all we
want it done with the kind of, so again, the way
a mechanism in place that works towards a solution. Yeah. That's all I want to see. Yeah. That's what everybody wants to see, a mechanism in place. If it's a MURC or another housing option, that it's in place right now and you can see the light in the tunnel. Nobody expects it to be built in the same day. No building is built in one day. Yeah, you got to do permits, you got to do environmentals, you got to do all kinds of stuff. Even a normal building takes years to do. But a mechanism to give everybody a home with special needs would be wonderful to put in place right now. And I think you're right. It's got a collaboration and I like the formula, what you mentioned earlier. It really is a percentage of the family, the government, the nonprofit.
And the person.
And the person, right? We could talk about this forever, but let's move to the next question. You and I are involved in the ICC. You helped establish the ICC. My fellow directors and I have been involved with it. We've been at conferences together. We're a proud member. But I think our listeners are not familiar with the ICC. It stands for Intentional Community Consortium, first of all, right? Can you give your interpretation of the purpose of the ICC so people might understand what we...
So when we looked at what we created, we said, we're not going to be able to create enough, but we can share every bit of knowledge we have with others and allow them to choose to create if they want. So we invited, no fees, right? There are no fees. To join in and have a conversation together about how we build communities. There are two criteria. One is you have to be committed to building 20 units or more. Why we chose that is because we want to have some impact. If we're doing one-offs, we're never going to get there. We can't talk about an extra bedroom in a house. We've got to talk about multiple units. And so it's got to be players and folks who are committed to multiple units. Do we hold people accountable for 20 units? No, but that's the principle where we're guiding significant impact. The second is you have to be ready to raise your voice. Put in your 2 cents, raise your voice, and share your knowledge. So raising your voice is about communicating this to all stakeholders, government, peers, community, that this is of value and needed, and let's do it together. And the other part is really being prepared to show up and give some time to helping others. And so you can't do it for yourself. We're not here in this world long enough to only get it done solely by ourselves. There's a famous quote by Rabbi Hillel that says, if I'm not for myself, who will be? I got to take care of myself. But if I'm only for myself, what am I? What kind of human being am I if I only take care of myself?
Wonderful.
And if not now, when? If I don't start now taking care of others and myself, it'll never be taken care of. So that principle guides much of our thinking at Reena, that you got to take care of your needs, look at yourself, what are your needs? It's probably true for others, they need the same. Make sure it's available to them, build it, share it. And so the ICC's intention is to share our knowledge of best practices, growing knowledge, advocacy efforts, and practices towards building 20 or more units. And so we've brought in CMHC to present at times. We've brought in other agencies who are building to share their models. We've talked about innovative projects that use technology. We even last time was gardening. We did a little bit about gardening.
There was two presentations with regards to.
Yeah.
Well, I mean that employs
Right.
individuals with varied abilities that can do things. Right.
Yeah.
My son works at the Legion. He works at the food
Right.
bank, and he's loved by everybody. He has capabilities that, hey, I didn't even know he had. Right? You know what
Exactly.
I mean? But the thing is, just to follow up on what you said, Bryan, is that 4 years ago was roughly when we started the ICC. Right, 4 years ago. It is for not to join other nonprofit, like-minded nonprofit organizations.
It doesn't even have to be nonprofit. Any group of people who feel they can make that kind of difference, it really doesn't matter.
Pursuit of housing options for
pursuit
individuals.
of housing, yeah.
Exactly.
DS or intellectual disabilities, whatever term you want to use, 20 units, sharing. It could be a for-profit. The need is so huge. Let's do it. This is a group of willing.
What I think, you stand corrected, is that what we did in Ottawa a few years ago, I think before pre-COVID, COVID seemed to end a lot of our progress or slowed us down. It looks like we're getting going again. But as a group, to present
So we went up to
needs.
Parliament Hill and hosted an event and invited parliamentarians to learn about projects, see us and meet us. And we had people from Quebec, we had people from Alberta, we had people from Ontario presenting projects that were being in development and saying, look, this is what can happen if you keep pushing and resourcing this. And so enable this to happen, make it easy for people to succeed. So again, the good news is CMHC is really open to hearing how we can help them. They're all looking for help. Never view it as a one way of your asking. It's an educational process. Most people don't know what you're going through in your life. You have to teach them and then show them how you can help them succeed in what they want to do. And these guys want to create housing. So if you can help them create housing, they're in. They're 100% there. You just have to show them the way. So I think federally, across the board, all the parties have been very supportive. So there's a consensus around housing. There's a consensus around this sector needing housing. Now we need to really get it locally figured out, because we've got to find the challenges. We're competing for land against developers. We're competing for capital to build against other folks. We're competing with ideologies out there. So we have to find ways to do it. So niche builds, infills, specialized projects, friendly developers. Those are the ways we can get it done. But it can be done.
The interests of governments keep changing, right? I mean, that we just have to make sure that we're...
Yeah, but they're always interested in citizens. So it's just a matter of how you frame the interest.
We have to be vocal. We have to be persistent. It's the word you use a lot, right? So I loved having you on our show today, by the way. It's been great. A lot of clarity. But I have two final questions for you, if you don't mind.
Sure. Well, we'll see. Because you hear them first before I tell you if I mind.
Of course, yes. They're easy ones. So what are the top two of three challenges faced by Reena as of today?
So there are two parts to that question. So Reena or Reena's mission. And so they're separate. Our mission drives everything. So for Reena's mission, which is really enabling inclusion in a community and creating supports for all abilities, the biggest issues we see right now are health. And I don't mean COVID only. COVID's just highlighted some of the issues. Disproportionately higher levels of hospitalization, long-term care, death for people with developmental disability, significantly higher numbers. You're at age 45, you're more likely to go into long-term care if you have a developmental disability. There's nowhere else to go, so they put you in, and it has the supports. Things like that. Return visits to hospitals, 30-day repeat visits to emergencies. Those sort of things are much higher in our sector. So health would be one of them, and we're really putting our mind to it, to the point where I've devoted significant hours to be engaged in the development of Ontario health teams. I chair now one of the Ontario health teams.
Super.
Trying to make an impact to build that bridge.
Great.
The second one that we put as a priority remains the housing piece. We think that, again, for our mission, people need that right of housing. For operationally, if you ask me as the CEO of Reena, what are the big challenges and risks for Reena? I think there are two big ones that I highlight. One is the labor market, which is generally sweeping across the system. We have some ideas about how we can solve it. We're just putting those together. But I can tell you it's a great profession. So family members.
Is this from accessing labor or from the cost of...
No, accessing. We're not finding enough people willing to step up and take their jobs. It may be the salary, it may be, but it's true for all sorts of jobs right now.
Every industry.
But it was pre-COVID an issue for our sector. So really, it's a great profession. It's meaningful work, great people. You're impacting lives. I often ask my board members, do you ever ask your kids if they would work in the field? And I haven't found any who have said yes. I mean, maybe once.
One or two might have said yes.
But we don't think of it as valuable for our kids to do. So how do we expect other people to do it? So we better change our attitude as family members. So that's number one, labor, internal to the organization. That's got to be. And the second one, in terms of our organization, is really shifting to being the mindset of everyone, so that when I work with someone, I focus on them as a whole human being. And we try to do this in our value statements, but it's a real hard thing to do. When the other person can't speak or may not have control of their physical body, how do you give them enough respect to at least speak for them? I'm going to now change your shirt. I know you like blue, so I'm going to put blue on you. Is that okay? If I don't ask that and haven't given them the respect for that moment, I've lost something. And I think it's easy to get lost in getting the shirt on. You know, I have a grandson, I shove this jacket on him, right? But we don't have much of a discussion about it. So I'm now going, but we should. We should treat the person like they're involved in the decision. And that's a hard thing. So culturally, that's one of the projects I have in my mind to embed that. I think it used to be much more, but as we grew, and I think it's a challenge with this profession, but I think many people
still do. It's how we perceive that individual, right? And with respect, right? And as a human being, right?
Right.
So what do you think is the top 2 or 3 challenges for the vulnerable population, from your perspective?
I think equitable access to fundamental elements of society. So, and I use equitable because it means sometimes an extra bit of lift or support beyond what someone else gets. So if we are doing affordable housing, right, then let's make sure we do affordable housing for everyone. And if some people need a supportive, affordable housing, then we got to build supportive, affordable housing built on the fact that everyone should have housing. If it's employment services, then we should build a model for everyone that creates that access. Whether all sorts of access services, think about right now, if you have COVID on your phone, your COVID passport indicator, what if you don't have a phone? What if you don't have a driver's license? What if you don't have, so how do you identify yourself? Have we built the equitable access to basic signing up for things, for registering services, in an easy way for people who know? We're struggling with it.
I experienced that.
Yeah.
My son doesn't drive, right? So we're going to a place, he says, can I have your driver's license? Well, he's special needs, I'm sorry.
Yeah. You can get a card.
Well, we had to get,
but,
you get a,
you can get a card,
and
so that helps.
But it could have been a bigger problem than it was.
But you go through any sort of interaction. So I think for people, that's the number one challenge, is getting that. I don't think we should expect more. We just should expect equitable. If it's being provided, let's figure out a way to make it inclusive and give it to everyone. And right now we haven't. We have said, you know what, we're siloing types of work, and historically may have made some sense, and may still make sense, certain aspects of it. But I think we need to go beyond and start working on that. And if we just take that, that will be a huge movement.
Huge move.
Huge.
Well, my friend, I wish you continued success with Reena.
Well, with your support.
I will
We'll
always
keep doing
support
it.
you. I will always support you. I know you support us for appearing on the show today. And my listeners, our viewers, I'm sure, were very impressed with your history, the milestones, and your story. And I hope one day to return on the show and have an update and some more great news for us.
I'm sure we will.
Thank you very much.
It'll be your news.
It was great.
Thank you.
Bryan Keshen has certainly provided us with a great deal of information. Should you wish to share your story or appear on a future webcast or podcast, feel free to write to us at info@cribwolf.com. This webcast and previous podcasts are available by visiting our website, www.cribwolftalks.com. Thank you for listening to our program. See you next time.